What is up, YouTube? We back at it again with another Witcher George video. Check him out, he makes great content. And this is like, just getting straight to it, this is, what are Leshens? When I think of Witcher 3 monsters, Leshens is like one of the first ones that comes to mind. Great enemy design, probably the most iconic. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think most people would say Leshens are one of the coolest monsters in The Witcher 3. There was a Netflix original movie that came out probably, I think it was like a while ago now. I think it was called The Ritual. An underrated movie, I'd say. People either love it or hate it. It's a creature feature movie. Usually monster movies are drunk teens getting killed in the woods by a creature or a beast or something. But the whole rant of that movie is the fact that I think the monster in that is based on the actual mythological Leshen. I can't remember like what mythology it's from in terms of like what country or whatever it's from. I know it's somewhere in Europe. I'm doing this reaction off the top of my dome, so I can't recall. But they kind of fill that like niche of guardians of the forest. The most memorable ones that I remember from The Witcher 3, of course, is the one in Skellige where you can either appease the spirit, taking sides with the elder, and I think he wants like the villagers to start hunting with spear again or something. And then the young Gen Z generation, the young whippersnappers, they ain't taking that. They want that monster gone. They want that Leshen's head on a spike. My personal favorite one that I always remember though, I can't remember his name. It's the one right outside of Novigrad. Basically, the Leshen took out his lumber crew, so... But the interesting thing about it is, it brings up the fact that, should you have killed it? The thing with, like, Leshens is they're monsters in the game, but there's always that aspect of... They're kind of like animals in a lot of ways. I don't know how to put it. Like, if you're out in the woods and you get bit by a bear or attacked by a wolf or something, you can't really blame the nature of the beast. You can't really be mad at it, and I always got that feeling a lot about Leshens in general. I always thought it was a missed opportunity that there wasn't like a friendly or a passive Leshen in the game, kind of like was it Bart the Troll that Dijkstra owns?
Siggy good.
I don't know, it would have been cool to see like a druid in Skellige have like a homeboy Leshen, maybe even do a quest where you fight alongside him, he's rooting people and stuff. It would have been cool. I always like the one right outside of Novigrad because it is a higher level one if I remember right, but it's kind of like that dichotomy of human expansion versus untamed, unbridled wilderness. And that whole area right there is so beautiful. Besides the one in Skellige where you can side with the Elder, I don't remember if there's another Leshen that you can actually like side with or help or whatever you want to call it. In terms of like what a Leshen really is, I guess I'm gonna find out more in this video hopefully. The game does treat them as like a metaphysical thing. I always assumed that a hand of something else, if that makes sense. Kind of like a god willed them into existence to protect nature, to protect Mother Earth.
Wind, water, heart, go planet!
By your powers combined, I am Captain Planet!
I know there are like ancient Leshens. They basically keep coming back until you relinquish their totems or whatever.
Gotta piss it off, make it leave its lair.
So just that kind of lore aspect of them, I always assumed that they were something more. What they are, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more in this video. I know they're classified as relics. All that hoopla out of the way, let's just dive right into it and see what Witcher George has to say about it. Yeah, that's so cool. That's the one right outside Novigrad, I think.
I decided to do another episode of Witcher Monster Lore today, and the reason I decided to do this is because I haven't done one in a little while, and I thought, you know what, this creature in the Witcher universe really interests me. So I went to my usual sources for information on this creature,
iconic.
but it was very bare bones, so I actually did a bit more
Enemy
research
design
into this
on
creature than I
point.
normally would. I went into the game, did some quests with it, looked in the bestiary, looked on many different sources, had a look at what I could find in the books. There was nothing, by the way, and I've gathered as much information on these creatures as I can.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was really interested. I've never read the books. I will read the books one day. It's kind of funny he just mentioned that right off the bat. They're not mentioned in the book, so again, that's CD Projekt Red taking something and making it their own, expanding upon it in their own way, and making them iconic in the games. You know, so that's really cool to see.
Or as I think there is. So, I've decided to make today's video on Leshens.
Oh, that's
now, you'll
so
probably know
cool.
this creature because, well, you encounter a few in the Witcher 3 game. They're generally worshipped as almost gods to a lot of the simple townsfolk, but
Right.
as you know as a Witcher, they are monsters. But monsters with a little bit of a different sort of aspect about them. They're as much a monster as a wolf is. They're just
Yeah.
an animal with instincts.
Exactly.
So to begin with, there's some basic information on these creatures I want to go into. So, first of all, they dwell in dense primeval woods, and what this effectively means is that these monsters, they would only live in a woodland area. They wouldn't live in, like, say, I don't know, a mountain or a field or something. They like living in forests. And the reason they do this is because they have quite a strong connection to animals. You know, if you look at their bodies, they appear to be almost made out of wood. You know, they look as if they're actually from forests. It's an interesting creature, definitely. And what it means by primeval woods is these creatures are ancient, and they like to live in ancient wood. You know, say if, for example, humans went and grew their own wood somewhere. A Leshen might move there, but they'd much rather go into an old wood. You know, this has history. So as we know from the games, these creatures are fiercely territorial. If you've played The Witcher 3, you'll know that every time you encounter a Leshen, apart from the couple occasions where you save one, they attack you without that much provocation.
Yeah, and the weird thing too about Leshens that I always wondered, you do see a bunch of them where, I think if I recall correctly, you see some that like have like meat piles or deer or something, so I think it does insinuate that they eat. But I don't know, it's kind of weird. I always thought like Leshens were more of like I'm trying to think of like a fantasy. I really do these reactions off the top, so I'm having a brain fart. I'm trying to think of like an example. They're like more like a spirit. They're not really like take like a bunch of random wood and stuff, you know what I mean? And like put a vessel of life into that, and that's kind of what a Leshen is. It's like the heart of the oak and the essence of like fantasy. Like I know there's examples of this in fantasy where it's not really like a real like I don't know if metaphysical is the right term. I don't know. They're not a real physical being. That's what I always assume. But then in game you get hints that they eat meat, they hunt. So I don't know. He might get into it. Let's see.
For example, I did a quest a while ago, and I think it was called the Woodland Spirit or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
and
something
you
like
find
that.
this cart, and the Leshen has killed every one of them. And you know, they're very territorial. If something enters their territory, it will probably die unless it's a Witcher. Another fact about these creatures is the way in which they hunt. Because just like any animal, they want to hunt stuff. They've got to eat. They've got to kill.
See,
you know, it's just natural instincts. So they do this by using stealth.
I was literally just talking about that, but yeah. The game does insinuate that they actually need sustenance, which is, I don't know, I always thought that was weird. You know? Why do they need sustenance if, like, especially ancient Leshens, it seems they have, like, a certain, I don't know if it's like a dark pact or something like that with the woods where if you kill them and you don't kill their totems or whatever, their fetishes, whatever they are, they come back. So, I don't know. They're essentially immortal until you take out their Achilles heels. So something like that needing sustenance, maybe it's more of like, maybe the hunting aspect of it is more symbolic in nature, like connected to the earth, connected to the animals, the plants, kind of aspect of hunting, you know, providing. I don't know.
Cunning. Generally, they'll use the environment around them to kill. They don't actually have to appear at all to do what they want.
killed
because
roots.
they have this inborn magical ability to be able to control plants and animals in their vicinity. So you'll have experienced this in The Witcher 3. For example, when you're fighting a Leshen, you can see it thrust its arms into the ground and summons roots that can attack you. This is it basically using its magic to communicate with the roots of the trees and summon them to then fight.
Right.
Which means that if you weren't a witcher, say, it could just summon a wolf to rip you to pieces. And we also know that it can use its magical abilities with animals. For example, it can turn into a horde of crows. It basically summons crows.
I mean, CD Projekt Red, whoever designed like Leshens and stuff, they pretty much had a slam dunk with it. I mean, and then like ravens and wolves. How can you go wrong with that? Ravens and wolves already have like are already one, not 1-in-1. They already have like a symbiotic relationship in the real world. Ravens in places where they overlap with wolves ravens are literally called wolf birds because they actually socialize and even play with wolf puppies and follow wolves around. Or sometimes like when ravens come across a kill in the wild, like a let's say it's like a large deer or a large elk. If it's like a fresh kill and the raven can't actually puncture into thy flesh to, eat, they'll actually call wolves to the kill to rip into it so they can get into it. There's this weird symbiotic relationship with ravens and wolves in the real world, so...
And uses them as kind of I suppose you could say it's like a guise, so it can't just be attacked while it's teleporting, I suppose you could call it. And it's quite funny, actually, because generally with fighting Leshens, half the battle is actually being able to reach them. Because of the fact that they use their environment in such a clever way, they'll uproot massive roots to protect themselves, or they'll kill you with animals, You have to get through all of that to even fight the
And the another thing, like, I'm totally ranting, but... if you saw, like, everyone who's played Death March enemy upscaling knows that wolf packs and dogs are like some of the worst enemies. The weird thing though about like the scaling in this game is like Witcher 3 does have Witcher 3 has like higher level enemies, so you can be level like 5 and experience like a level 30 monster in the world. That's totally something that can happen. But the reason I'm bringing this up is I've fought Leshens before, and some of them do have large wolf packs with them, but generally the wolves that come with Leshens seem to be nerfed versions of general wolves you find out in the wilderness. Like, for example, like if I was just out in the wilderness and I found a level 10 wolf with no Leshens around, which is generally what you're going to experience, and then you find a level 10 Leshen, which I don't know if there is a level 10 Leshen, but... then you find a level 10 Leshen with level 10 wolves. The random level 10 wolf out in the wild is going to be stronger than the level 10 wolf with the Leshen. And this is probably from a game balance, enemy scaling perspective kind of thing. So you're not easily overwhelmed, or Leshens aren't super overpowered. I don't know. But it's just something I've noticed, more specifically with the health values. Typically, the wolves that come with Leshens are weaker. Or, I'm not sure if the damage is weaker, but they definitely have less health. They probably do less damage too. I don't know, but...
they'll kill you with animals, You have to get through all of that to even fight the Leshen, which in itself is a very difficult enemy to kill anyway.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're a witcher and you have the ability to summon...
If you're running like an Igni, like sign build, if you're using the I've done builds where I had the Yrden alternate sign with the pumping DPS, the magic trap, and then the alternate fire stream. You can literally just pop that down, and then you could pop the normal Yrden to trap them in, and you can just fire stream, and then you have a constant DPS from fire stream, and then you have a constant DPS from the Yrden sign. It just melts them.
Fire. So, Leshens go under the category of relics, or ancient creatures, and that's because they don't have a classification. For example, a higher vampire will obviously be a vampire, or a Bruxa will obviously be a vampire, but Leshens are Leshens. There is no subspecies that they're part of, at least not that we know of. There could be from a different world, there could be loads of different types of Leshens. There are different Leshens within the Leshen sort of term, but there's not many. It's basically the same thing, just some are slightly better than others.
There's the subspecies that was of like Leshens. I think they're called Spriggans, like Spriggans from Skyrim, which are very similar to Leshens. And the Spriggans were in Blood and Wine. They were in the Duchy of Toussaint. They kind of look like giants from Skyrim. Yeah, similar things. I always thought the Leshens look way cooler than the Spriggans in the Toussaint.
It's like drastically different to, say, vampires. So, what features do these creatures possess? I imagine you already know because you've actually seen them, but just as a basic description, if you look at them, they have basically a big deer skull head with massive antlers. It's quite a cool design from CD Projekt Red's part. It does make them look like tribal sort of gods, which I think was definitely the intention they were going for. So, it's certainly an interesting one. They also have tree-like limbs, which is something I mentioned earlier, and that's just because of their connection to nature, I suppose.
They dabbed up in that nature, boy.
Creatures are, it's effectively if a tree came to life and had a baby with a deer. So that's the basics of a Leshen covered. Now I want to go over the game information. And all the information I have before is obviously from the game, but I mean I want to go into the more technical side of it. So what do these creatures drop? What happens when you fight them? What will you expect if you encounter one of these creatures? So first of all, you have a chance of a few drops when you fight a Leshen, and this is Leshen Resin, Ancient Leshen Mutagens, Fiber, Timber, Leshen Mutagens, Infused Shards, Hardened Timber, and Monster Bones. So this basically confirms, at least from a game point of view, that these creatures are monsters, just because of the fact they drop Monster Bones, which the name in itself implies what it is, and if it has the same sort of chemical makeup as, say, in a monster...
Yeah, I always assumed that was more from just like a game design standpoint. I don't know.
...the bone from a drowner, then surely that it goes under the same bracket of monster.
Yeah.
So when you're fighting these creatures, they're actually very, very slow. I mean, they can teleport, etc., which sort of implies that they're fast, but as a creature, when they're actually going to hit you,
they RP walk like they're the main character.
Generally with slow movers, they're very, very hard hitters. It's almost like, maybe not quite as strong, but imagine you had the force of a bus, but at half the speed sort of thing. That's effectively a Leshen.
Yeah, they do hit hard.
So, when fighting these creatures also, as I mentioned earlier, they have the ability to turn into a horde of crows, and it basically
This is the one right outside Novigrad, if I remember.
So, the way that they do this is they basically use their magic to teleport, but they also call for a horde of crows to assist them using their own magic. If you want to fight one of these creatures, much like the hunters in Halo, the best place to hit them is in the back, as that's where they're most vulnerable. So an interesting thing that Leshens actually do is they form links with people. And what that means is they use their magic to kind of attach themselves to a person, and they use that person to maintain influence in the place that they live.
Yeah.
You see this in a lot of Witcher quests. So what...
Right. I forgot about that. That's so interesting. I forgot about that. That's the one in Skellige does that. It marks the marked the girl that the younger guy liked. I can't remember his name, the redhead. And then you have to exile her or whatever to get something about I can't remember what it does, but no matter what, the Leshen will keep coming back or keep preying on them or something. I don't remember. I forgot completely about that. It's been a while since I've done that quest.
Happens is if you kill that person, which in The Witcher 3 you will see, the Leshen is actually permanently banished from where it's from where it's, sat. And that's a way to permanently get rid of them.
Yeah.
And another thing to watch out for when fighting these creatures is that if you see a Leshen thrust its arms into the ground, you move out of the way. You try and get behind it, because it's about to summon a bunch of roots to rip you to pieces. So, Leshens are also vulnerable to fire. So, you can imagine this is just because of the fact that it's basically a tree with a deer head. So, if you use fire, you can burn it, and you can deal a lot more damage. And it actually immobilizes it so it can't do anything while it's on fire, which is quite a cool little thing to do. The oil you would use against this creature is obviously relic oil, as that's the bracket it goes under. And another very useful piece of equipment to use against it is dimeritium bombs, as it stops it being able to use the magic that I mentioned earlier, where it communicates with nature and uses it as a way to fight.
Yeah, so does the dimeritium bombs make it so it can't root and stuff? Or teleport with crows? I didn't know that, if that's the case. Pretty cool.
So to end this video, I want to go over a little piece of information about Leshens that's actually from the official Witcher 3 site. So allow me to read this for you guys. Humans have long been fascinated by the wild wood. Living in its vicinity was the source of tales about creatures ferocious and benign, friendly and hostile. As they started to settle deeper and deeper into the forests, respect for the unknown diminished. Lumber was gathered, stone abodes were built. As the pestilence that was humanity grew bigger, so did the forests and its inhabitants' wrath. At the heart of the forest lies a secret. In a place born of darkness and primeval nature resides a mighty and terrifying guardian. Immune to human steel, it is believed the Leshen is nature's way of protecting the forests and the animals that live within it. From the threat, humans started to pose upon their ravaging expansion deeper into the lands. Along with the animals it commands, the Leshen became a force to be reckoned with. Sometimes worshipped, this creature can heal other woodland animals and summon neckers, or crows, to protect the forest. Its attacks are slow, but deadly. Be cautious not to get shackled by its underground roots. So I hope you've all learnt something new today about Leshens and these really, really interesting creatures in the Witcher universe. They're very mysterious and they like to stalk their prey, as you see in The Witcher 3. It's very, very interesting. It's almost like if you had gone to Odim, took away a lot of his power, and turned him into a big tree monster. You know, it's the same thing where he follows you around and stalks you a bit before he, you know, goes in for the kill. Whereas a Leshen will be actual physical violence and Gauntra will be, hey, I've got a deal for you. So anyway, that's the end of today's video.
Okay.
Thank you all for watching. As always, a big thank you to the...
Yeah, and that was What Are Leshens by The Witcher George. I totally forgot about the connection. The Leshens have the totem, so the thing they form, the only one I remember them doing that is the one in Skellige with the woman in the village. So it's almost like they form like a soul link with a person, or a soul link with the totems, a soul link with whatever. There's something physical in the world that seems to grow their strength over time or something, and it keeps them bound in some aspect, which basically insinuates in a lot of ways that it is a spirit of some sort. And even in the description on the website that he was reading there, that I never read that, it's essentially saying that, yeah, they're born of like a guardian of the forest. Again, I know I keep saying that, but what a forestry protector, you know? What else is there really to say about it? Yeah, it is like kind of like a weird soul link.
A friend once told me about a case like this. Could be strong emotions that bind you to the rose, feelings we witchers call pins. They're what keeps you in this world.
Which kind of just goes back to my whole thing about there's some like humanity element to it, maybe like with relics, you know? I really don't know anything about it, but I always assumed a lot of relics are like primordial humans, in the sense of not humans, but they're the precursors to humans. Something like a Necker, essentially like the Neanderthals to humans in the Witcher universe. I never thought Leshens were like dark though. I always thought them as just, in a way, if that makes sense. In a lot of ways, they're just in their actions, you know? Humans will look at them and think, oh, they're monsters, they're beasts, they're this and that, right? But I never looked at Leshens like that. I really hope The Witcher 4 expands more upon some of this lore in the game, as I know there's a lot of liberties taken from the books versus the games. You know, there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences. It's going to be really interesting to see what CD Projekt Red does with some of the more extended background, kind of niche lore of the series and the games. But whoever designed the Leshens deserves a raise.
Of the money.
Yeah, I mean, what else really is there more to say? Amazing monsters. You got ravens, crows. I actually forgot that they can control Neckers. And with all that ranting and raving out of the way, that was What Are Leshens by The Witcher George. Amazing video, amazing monsters, amazing lore. What else is there to say? I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.